Well, today we're going to read poems from one of the great English poets who emerged during the period from 1593 to 1633, and came from a rather aristocratic background, but turned his attention to looking after a small country parish near Salisbury, not far from here in Bath. And he wrote poetry from that time onwards. Although he'd been a Latin orator, was obviously a very good scholar. He wrote poetry that is as clear today as it was in his own day. It uses very, very simple language in beautiful metrical shapes and forms. And he put this together as a collection entitled The Temple. So that the whole body of the poems represents the church. And several of the poems are iconographic. They're in the shape that it's representing. And I'm going to start with one of them called The Altar, which is in the shape of an altar. And we're going to, towards the end, read one which has the title Easter Wings and is in the shape of wings, getting smaller in the middle and coming out at the end. Herbert has been an enormous influence on subsequent English poets, always, I think, holding up this importance of simplifying language, of not making it so complicated that it's only for an elite. And much admired by many people inside and outside the academic community, very much read. Some of his poems were turned into hymns, which are still very popular. And one of them had an enormous influence on a writer who died before the end of the Second World War, Simon Weil, who actually had a huge influence and is very well known in Poland, was admired by Czesław Miłosz. And she almost was, she was converted really by the poem Love, which I'm going to read right at the end, and said that she felt embraced by its tenderness. Soon after reading it, she read it every time she had a violent headache. And after one of these occasions, she had a mystical vision of Christ appearing to her. So the poem in her mind was much more than just a poem. It was like a prayer, and we're going to end with that one appropriately, perhaps. Well, the first one is The Altar. A broken altar, Lord, thy servant rears, made of a heart and cemented with tears, whose parts are as thy hand did frame, no workman's tool hath touched the same. A heart alone is such a stone as nothing but thy power doth cut, wherefore each part of my hard heart meets in this frame to praise thy name. That, if I chance to hold my peace, these stones to praise thee may not cease. O let thy blessed sacrifice be mine, and sanctify this altar to be thine. The second poem I'm going to read is called Matins, Morning Prayers. I cannot ope mine eyes, but thou art ready there to catch my morning soul and sacrifice. Then we must needs for that day make a match. My God, what is a heart? Silver or gold or precious stone, or star, or rainbow, or a part of all these things, or all of them in one. My God, what is a heart that thou shouldst it so eye and woo, pouring upon it all thy art, as if thou hadst nothing else to do. Indeed, man's whole estate amounts, and richly, to serve thee. He did not heaven and earth create, yet studies them, not him by whom they be. Teach me thy love to know, that this new light which now I see may both the work and workman show. Then by a sunbeam I will climb to thee. It is very difficult to choose from this wonderful collection of poems, but I've chosen a number of Herbert's poems express conflict, difficulty of following God's path. But the ones I've chosen today really touch on God's love for us and his endless wooing, as he talks about in that poem, and pulling man towards him. And in the next poem, Herbert uses the image of a pulley, which is the device we use to pull heavy objects up by pulling the rope down. So it's on a gantry which brings the bucket or the crane or whatever else you're pulling up the other side. So it's a kind of paradoxical push-pull situation. You pull down in order to pull up, and that's paradoxes behind the whole poem. The pulley. When God at first made man, having a glass of blessings standing by, let us, said he, pour on him all we can. Let the world's riches, which dispersed lie, contract into a span. So strength first made a way, then beauty flowed, then wisdom, honor, pleasure. When almost all was out, God made a stay, perceiving that alone of all his treasure, rest in the bottom lay. For if I should, said he, bestow this jewel also on my creature, he would adore my gifts instead of me, and rest in nature, not the God of nature. So both should losers be. Yet let him keep the rest, but keep them with repining restlessness. Let him be rich and weary, that at least, if goodness lead him not, yet weariness may toss him to my breast. And this is the second of the iconographic poems, Easter Wings, very appropriate for this season. And as I said, it goes from a long line to a very, very short line with only one stress in the middle in the shape of wings, therefore. Lord, who createst man in wealth and store, though foolishly he lost the same, decaying more and more, till he became most poor. With thee, O let me rise as larks harmoniously, and sing this day thy victories. Then shall the fall further the flight in me. My tender age in sorrow did begin, and still with sickness and shame thou didst so punish sin that I became most thin. With thee let me combine and fail this day thy victory. For if I imp my wing on thine, affliction shall advance the flight in me. So it's two Easter wings in this shape, the second part rising in each stanza. And the last of these poems is this poem, Love. There are 3 poems in the collection, all with the same title. And this is the last one in the whole collection. He placed it there to close the collection. And it uses gospel stories of the feasts, but of course it's the whole poem plays with the idea of the Eucharist, the shared bread, body of Christ, and the whole idea of sitting down. And it's a wonderful sense of completion at the end of this very, very simple visual poem. It's almost a drama, and of course you can feel this is the period of Donne. Poems are often very dramatic, but of course it's also the same period as Shakespeare was writing. Love. Love bade me welcome, yet my soul drew back, guilty of dust and sin. But quick-eyed love, observing me grow slack from my first entrance in, drew nearer to me, sweetly questioning if I lacked anything. A guest, I answered, worthy to be here. Love said, you shall be he. I, the unkind, ungrateful? Ah, my dear, I cannot look on thee. Love took my hand and smiling did reply, who made the eyes but I? Truth, Lord, but I have marred them. Let my shame go where it doth deserve. And know you not, says Love, who bore the blame? My dear, then I will serve. You must sit down, says Love, and taste my meat. So I did sit and eat.